everybody. Welcome to Scaling with Samir. I am so excited to feature my next guest who not only is running a wine empire and actually has one of the largest wine stores in the UK, I just found out, but also has a very seasoned career of doing really interesting things, both in retail and digital, leading amazing teams. And so I am super pumped to feature Steve Finlan, the CEO of the Wine Society. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Samir. Thanks for having me on.
I'd love to have you just kind of kick things off a little bit and tell us what the Wine Society is.
Yeah, so interesting actually, because the Wine Society is something called a mutual, which I don't think you have mutuals in the US, but think of a cooperative business that is owned by the people that are part of it. So we have members who are shareholders, one member, one share. And we can only sell to them. Fortunately, there's about 240,000 of them. It was founded in 1874, so this year is our 150th year. I've been there about 5 years with a brief to modernize and make sure the business is fit for another 150 years, if that's possible. We sell wine from £6.95 a bottle to £6,500 a bottle, and everything in between. So we're considered very expert, and our members, the people that sign up for us, and you pay a one-off subscription to join, and you join for life. So there's no further payments required. And then you get access to all of our wines and services. And because we can only sell to our members, it's actually a business that I was saying to Samir earlier is I was slightly nervous about the word scaling, because actually that's not our goal. What our goal is to do is only to committee. We have a committee of members that I report to. The only thing they want is member sat. So member sat is my only KPI. They expect me to run a decent business. They expect me to sell a lot of wine. But actually the thing judged, measured on is customer member satisfaction. So it's quite refreshing to be able to take a long-term view of things. So we're working on a 5 to 10 year horizon rather than anything shorter than that. The thing about being a mutual is that you never have a huge amount of money in the bank. The challenge is to have enough, but as soon as you go into surplus, any surpluses are reinvested back into either wine, service or price. And because we're heavily investing into price, we've got the lowest margins in the industry. Actually, we're selling both regular wine and fine wine at cheapest in the market. So it's a really unusual business. And as a CEO, having spent 40 years in properly commercial businesses, the commerciality here is very different. We have to differentiate ourselves. And actually, a lot of the things that we do are very counterintuitive. So we, for example, 80% of our deliveries arrive next day and are for free. You can order a bottle of wine for free, get it next day. So, we're a bit of a virtual wine rack as well, to save people having to nip out to the, supermarket, grocery store to get wine. So we're a very unusual business. I'll pause there, Samir.
No, I love that, and I'm curious, what you just touched upon. How do you make those decisions, or how do you decide, right? Because you've got, like you said, nearly 40 years in retail. Now, some of these decisions you said are counterintuitive. I'm really curious. Maybe are you making these decisions around consumer behavior, on certain metrics you're trying to improve, like the customer satisfaction? Are these, I guess I'm curious how you're coming up with these ideas, especially that they're.
Yeah, so it's all about having this point of difference. So our competition, particularly in fine wine, are superb at what they do. They're really good. The other sellers, online wine sellers, are fabulous at what they do. So therefore, actually, we've got to stand out. So we predominantly do it by looking at, so our members are consumers elsewhere. They expect us to be able to do at least the same as everybody else, but actually they know we're a mutual. So for many years of our history, they've forgiven us for being a bit useless at taking a week to get wines, or, having a contact centre that operates by post, not by phone, all of that sort of stuff. So we've had to basically help ourselves to get just about the best proposition in the market. And what I mean by that is the lowest prices, the fastest delivery, all the things that people expect, full flexibility. We do a lot of services around the side. So we do a lot of, this year we'll do about 200 tastings and events, everything from dinners to walk around tastings. And we offer them the lowest price that we can. Our goal is not to maximize money, maximize profit. Our margins are low. Actually, our strategy is to reduce margins, not to increase them. And I spent a career out of increasing margin, making the business more efficient, making the things that will make shareholders drive shareholder value. But when your shareholders are the people that are buying from you, my God, it makes it so much easier as long as you make the right things. So therefore, things like, I think we can afford to take delivery charges off. We did that 2 years ago. It had a profound effect on the business. Then we said, we'll not just take delivery charges off, but we won't have a threshold. And previously, if you bought 12 bottles, you get delivery for free. Now you can buy 1, 2 or 3 bottles in exactly the same way, get delivery for free. Our reserves operation, where we look after members' wines, and we age it because we've got specialist warehousing to do that. Again, we're the cheapest in the market, but we're also the most flexible in the market as well. There's no restriction in terms of what you put in, what you take out. So it's those sorts of things that drive us. But of course, actually in driving those, because we're driven by member satisfaction, then ultimately, actually, the scores come along with that. So we've got a net promoter score of 80. We've got on our own where we measure what members think about our touch points, we're 9 out of 10. And Trustpilot, we're 4. I think we just dropped to 4.8 actually, but we were 4.9. So across all of those, but that we have to, because if we don't, our members have got other choices and other places to go. So we've got to continue developing and being fast. And that involves, it means our website's got to be great. Saying to Samir earlier, the members that we've got are either wine buffs, wine enthusiasts, or wine curious. People tend just to get wine. There's something in it for them. So therefore, actually, our journey to checkout needs to be outstanding. But equally, our site needs to be incredibly content immersive. Actually, a good example is for issues like, sustainability and social impact. We've got a plan. We're 3 years into the plan. It's going incredibly well. But actually, we're carbon neutral, not because we're offsetting, but because we're insetting, because we've got great relationships with our suppliers that go back, in some cases, well over 100 years. And actually, we're giving money to them rather than to an offsetting scheme somewhere else in the world to improve their approaches to regenerative agriculture. Because, of course, wine is a threat for climate change, weather events for those that aren't particularly keen on climate change. Whenever people ask me about it, I always say, actually, just go to a vineyard and talk to the farmers. They'll tell you about weather impact. So it doesn't really matter whether it's going to get hot in 50 years. Actually, they're seeing it now. The harvest this year in France being decimated by mildew because it's been so wet. The harvest in Germany has been devastated because of hail. All things that they weren't having to put up with even 10 years ago. So we have to play to that. And therefore, when members come onto the site, they can buy quickly. But actually, our dwell time on our content pages is about an hour. So these guys are very invested in wine. I'm showing off now, but actually, we've been Online Retailer of the Year with the 2 big awards producers in the UK for the last 5 years, and Retailer of the Year for the last 4, Buying Team of the Year for the last 4. Going, because actually what it means is, why are we Buying Team of the Year? Because we've got the biggest team of buyers. This will really surprise you if anybody is from a purely commercial background. Is I really don't get involved in what we buy. Put some frameworks around it so the buyers have got some guardrails, but it's not like the buyer comes in, chooses a wine, the merchandiser then goes out and says you can't have that one, you have to have that one, and you've got to fill slots, and you've got to. The buyers have got a lot of freedom, and because of that, they're in the vineyards a lot, and they're making connections. They're making connections with the vineyards, and actually, if you think it's a heaven-sent content development opportunity, so you can go onto our website and really sort of explore France or explore Portugal or explore Bordeaux if that's your thing. we've only just started. I mean, our plan is to get even better than that.
I mean,
But
you touched on a lot of little golden nuggets there, right? I think right one of them that I appreciated is the free shipping. Promoted a lot on this podcast, but I can't tell you, the listener, how important free shipping is and how impactful it can be on your
yeah,
business. If you feel like your price point is too low and you don't know what to do, go back and listen to the episode we had with Cosmos Q. We handled that with them. Very inexpensive product, and we talked about ways around that, which it sounds like you've also had to potentially overcome because you have very inexpensive wines. You talked about NPS scores. Everyone here should know what their NPS scores are. If you don't know what they are and you're not running NPS surveys, please start now. And then I think that also kind of lends itself into some of those ideal profiles, right? You touched upon knowing some of your ideal customer profiles, which helps you inform better decisions, your content strategy, how you have the website laid out, how you're interacting with your customers, which I think is amazing. But then you also touched upon having direct communication with, let's call it supply chain, if you will, right? Of
yeah,
your supplier. And I think that's really important too. Sometimes maybe you're the manufacturer, I understand, but a lot of brands out there and businesses are not, or they're still getting materials or ingredients or whatever it is. And absolutely you want to know those things. And I think you're in an amazing position where your business, right, is looking at a very long-term view, which allows you to think that way. It can be a long-term thing and can sit and become better with age and everything else, but it's still an interesting thing that I think a lot of people sometimes ignore or don't pay enough attention to. So I appreciate that you touched upon that. I am curious though on like the we see a lot of brands now having a lot of success with building communities, right? And curating communities, creating content around education, creating content to really educate the customer and things like that, right? And you are you have to become a member to join. And I'm curious, sort of, how do you feel like that's impacted things, or maybe more specifically, should other businesses think about kind of running a business model like that, especially as you're sort of coming from the retail world and kind of entering into this, a lot of digital, right, as far as the business goes, but also like, you have to become a member to get in. And I'm so curious kind of how you think of that, almost like a gated, become a club member. And I think there's a lot of businesses that have a lot
yeah,
of success from that. I'm just
yeah.
curious, yeah, how has that impacted things in your eyes?
I think it's there's two sides to this. The first one is that as a members organisation, even though it's only £40, $50 to join, and that's it for life, and then you're in. Actually, that's quite a significant barrier. The other element that makes life difficult is the fact that we don't discount at all. So we'll get rid of bin ends, at 10% off, and we'll clear them at 10% off. But having said that, we have what we call an everyday fair price. So we have none of the psychological advantages of discounting, even if it's fake discounting, which most of it is. So that makes it difficult for us to grow. But having said that, we don't need to grow very much. We've got 180,000 active members, people that have bought in the last year, and my target in 5 years' time is 192. That brings on another challenge, though, is actually if we're going to have a net 12k increase, they've got to be the right people. So curation is incredibly important. And what goes alongside curation then is we built our insight function unbelievably over the last 5 years to get to the stage where we understand our members, we know what they're doing, we know what's in their basket, we know what, almost to the point at which we know what their next best action is. And actually, you need a tech suite which is able to do that. That's not but one that is very agile and very flexible. For us, even though we've got channels outside the website delivers 87% of our business. But we've got everything from monitoring at one end to make sure that we get alerts when something's happened that we don't like the look of. But having said that, we've also got a suite of tools that run through every journey on the website. It's quite common stuff to a degree, but having said that, actually we've really simplified it so that ultimately we're not overloaded with so much data. And again, it's a curated journey to make sure that you're generating the right data. And the right data for us is definitely not the right data for somebody like Clark's, where I was before here, that you'll know from, that's really important. But then you need the data science that sits alongside that to be able to make sense of it and then convert that into practical solutions. So we've cocked up big time along the way. But having said that, the mistakes that we've made have been mistakes around plug and play. We're quite a big business to have that level of agility around plug and play. I should have said we're about 150 million pounds this year. We'll be about 175 million dollars. So that's a sort of an element of the scale of it. So we're a big small business, or we're a small big business, depending which way you look at it. And actually, that can be difficult from a tech perspective sometimes. So actually choosing the right elements. I was saying to Samir early, so, actually our new member journey is an obvious one, but it's important. If we get a member to a third purchase, they're going to stay for 10 years on average. And 5 years ago, it took 450 days to get 3 purchases. Now it's taking 117. And the average member will make 8 purchases during the year, which is insane for a wine retailer. However, because we're so flexible, and because actually what we've done is to encourage more smaller orders, that doesn't necessarily equate into growth. So if I sort of take this year as an example, our bottles per order are down. It's about 9 bottles per order. Our average order value is down, but our frequency is up. So actually, in this ecosystem of 180,000 active members, actually, if we're getting, so year to date, we're 6 months into our financial year, we've had 50,000 more member transactions. So actually, for me, that's an indication of member satisfaction. We're probably at the same place as we would be if we were selling at a higher margin and having less interaction and frequency. But actually, the joy for our business is that if we can get that sense of community, if we can get that frequency of purchase, get that participation, we can get that dwell time on the website. Nobody else can do that because that's not how they're wired.
Yeah, I mean, that's first of all, very impressive metrics. And I know you said you were a little nervous about kind of the scaling aspect of the name of the podcast, because you guys' goals are not to scale, but those are key metrics and really important things that every brand should be looking at, right? If they're looking to scale, because paying attention to those and knowing what those are, right? We talked actually on the previous episode, we were talking a lot about lead-in products, right? Like, what is the product that someone needs to buy to then become that really awesome lifetime customer, right? That to increase that customer lifetime value, right? And I'm sure you have some of those metrics, right? Of course, like, hey, if someone comes in for a $5 bottle versus a $500 bottle, those are 2 completely different types of customers. And so paying attention to those metrics and understanding what does this person turn into? And like you said, hey, if we can get them to purchase 3 times, they're a customer for 10 years, like, great. All our marketing efforts should go towards that and push and promoting that. And then great, once they're in, and we know it. And now it's just the satisfaction score and all those kinds of things, which I love. And I'm curious, before we hit record, we were kind of talking about some leadership things and your style of CEO style and whatnot. I'm curious, what leadership practices have you found to be the most effective in building such high performance teams?
I think many and varied and different over the years, to be honest. I'm sort of this will be my last role, other than sort of non-exec and maybe a bit of consultancy. But having said that, it took me quite deliberately many years before I got into a CEO role, and actually, therefore, I was in senior positions right across the spectrum of a retail business. So ran for HR in Europe for Gap. And I was an MD at Thomas Cook, which is a travel company in the UK, was a travel company. And then with probably Britain's most famous retailer, Marks and Spencer, where I ran international, I ran retail. And then actually that's where I started my career donkeys years ago. But the thing that, it's cheesy, but having said that, actually the thing that is most important, of course, is people. In the role that I am now, it's about picking the right team, picking the right blend of skills, and not just the right blend of skills, but also difference. I think sometimes, I've worked for many CEOs who are really threatened by people that might be better than them, threatened by people who's got a skill set that they haven't. And I think you've just got to be incredibly open-minded to make sure that you've got the right people slotted into the right roles. And you've got to be honest with yourself in terms of either what you're good at, what you're not good at, but perhaps most importantly, in that sort of old dogs new tricks style, the things that you really can't be bothered to improve once you get to a certain age. So therefore hire it and make sure that you appreciate it and develop it and bring it on. So I was saying to Samir earlier, he asked me about my day, and I try and make sure that 80% of my day is free, because actually that level of accessibility and visibility, we're a relatively small business. I mean, we've got warehousing, so we're about 1 kilometre end to end. But having said that, I'll walk the site twice a day and talk to people, listen to people, find out what's going on. They give me the best ideas. I rarely come up with the best ideas. And then you identify, diagnose issues. But having said that, that time in your office when you're not doing anything, again, I've worked for CEOs who are just too busy getting involved. And actually, sometimes you just got to let things play out. We've got so much information about everything. We launched a range of sake last week, which is the first for us, part of that sort of range expansion, which is a Japanese wine, Japanese rice wine, for those that don't know. I've got people running up saying, we sold the first bottle. We first sold the next 10 bottles. We've sold, and actually, I'm not bothered, probably for another 3 months. Let it run. To see whether it's a success or not, because we're not going to make any decisions off the back of knowing that any sooner. And so I think there's that sort of element of sort of kind of calming things down and helping people think about, the big thing for me is I want teams with curiosity. Of course, in any business, you've got people that come in, they just want to do a great job and they want to go home. But having said that, curiosity is a great thing, because then you've got cross-fertilization, you've got collaboration, you've got all of those things going on. And, for me, I'll know I've succeeded where that's just happening organically every day, irrespective of what I do. I'll retire a happy man then when you've just got this, a pulse, a vibrant business with a pulse that's constantly curious about what else we could do, how else we could satisfy members, but equally an organisation that is just seamlessly working together. And you'll probably know better than me in terms of the kinds of environments that achieve that. And you've got to match the environment to the people that you're leading. But having said that, doesn't help getting people out of offices. It doesn't help, common areas. It doesn't hurt having a bit of fun while we're doing it. Look, we're selling wine. So actually wine is ever present in our business. We have a tasting room. The buyers will be tasting upwards of 100 wines a day. It was tucked away right in the corner of the building. We put it by reception so that anybody coming in from the outside or anybody inside now looks through a massive glass window to see what our core activity is, tasting and enjoying wines. I do think sometimes that we're too quick to interfere. I do think that we don't see our primary role as being a coaching role. Everybody's got different styles, but that's the style that's worked for me. I've not bothered in the slightest if people make mistakes, big or small, as long as we learn from them and we move on. We're making mistakes every day, but actually increasingly we're doing some great things. If I sort of take our insight function, our insight function does a lot of research, talks to members. Actually, in the early days, they were getting a lot of things wrong. But actually, because of their curiosity, because of where they're going, actually the quality of information, but more importantly, the quality of the questions that they're asking in order to get the information back are unbelievable now. They've left me way behind. I can provide a bit of grey hair to say, actually, I think that means this, but I have not a clue how they do what they do. And I think that's not a bad thing either. I would always say to it,
supporting them in making those decisions on their own.
Yeah. But I think the other element is that, we give just a few of the silly things that we do, but actually I think they're quite profound in some ways. We give people reading time and we'll physically take them out of their work environment and put them somewhere where actually they can explore what they do. They can explore wine. They can explore, we pay for all of our employees to go through some quite advanced, starts basic, becomes more advanced wine training. We want them to love the product.
Hmm.
The purpose of our business is championing the joy of good wine. You can't champion the joy of good wine unless you know a bit about it or are curious about it. It's not everybody has to do it. I'll take a blank week. We'll cancel trading for a week and it's 2 weeks and just let things run so that we can evaluate them properly rather than evaluate them in real time. Drove my head of digital nuts, but actually got a lot out of it in terms of redesigning some of the journeys that weren't working the way that we wanted them to. So I think having time to think about stuff, having time to start stuff, having time for things to play through. It must be so hard if a CEO hasn't got an interest in people. And I've worked for them; there are people around, and it's really hard. You can't be an island because not one person isn't that good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the curiosity aspect. I'm going to think a lot about that, I think, after this around how do you measure that? Because it's a tricky one, right? I think there's a little bit of gut aspect, right? There's culture. I was actually having a conversation with another entrepreneur, a friend of mine, who he found out that one of their key directors was bottlenecking all those types of curiosity decisions, and it was actually really toxic for the business because he would just put up these roadblocks for no reason. And when they got rid of him, there was this big sigh of relief in the whole business, in the whole company culture, even, right? And so I think that's a difficult thing to measure, but you feel it right away. And to your point, right, it's allowing the team to have that curiosity. Well, let's test it. Who knows what's going to happen? Like we're a big team of testers. It's right in our ethos of what we do. But I think that should be true for every business. And yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. And
There's a good
I
example.
applaud your leadership style with.
There's something that
Please.
we've done that illustrates a number of these things. So, one of our team, quite junior, had been on in her own time researching wine samples. So little 15 milliliter aspects of wine, and they're incredibly expensive. Operationally, they're incredibly difficult. But she said, if I can get samples into boxes when people buy wine of something else they might like, I think this could be an incredible idea. I thought to myself, I think that is an incredible idea, but I can't see the route to being able to get samples at scale. So just said to her, right, that's your day job now for the next 6 months. Come back in 6 months, talk to people. If you need any help or resource or you need a bit of budget to do stuff, come back. And she's come back and we're now starting to do it. Don't know what the results are, but that you can't bottleneck. You just can't bottleneck because
Yeah.
people have better ideas than we do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I love that. And I also love what you're I think I encourage everybody to think about how they can instill also the business and educating your team members on the product and industry, sort of what you're doing with all your team members. I think that's really amazing because I think it's really true, and you also can really find out who's passionate or not. Right. I one time I had a sales rep and he was actually a wines beforehand. And then, he was not that passionate about marketing. He wasn't doing the research. He wasn't doing the homework. He wasn't really surrounding himself. And one time we went out for dinner and he's explaining to me these wines and I saw him light up and I'm like, dude, you should go back to being a wine salesman. I don't think we're your thing, because he was so passionate about it. And so, yeah, I think you can kind of tell who's gonna go the extra mile and learn those things, because no matter what, it's going to help whatever their role is. It's going to benefit them. It's going to benefit the business. It's going to benefit everybody. So Steve, I really appreciate the time. I really appreciate all of the advice. Any last tidbits or anything before we go here?
The only thing I would say to anybody doing whatever they're doing is, for goodness sake, make sure you enjoy it. Enjoyment is everything. And that's why I've hung around retail for so long. That's why I've done so many different broad aspects. That's why I was 58 when I got CEO for the first time, because I just enjoyed what I did. Sometimes that's more important than ambition. So anyway, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on all the way from over here.
Thank you so much, Steve. Really appreciate it.